everyone, it's Brenda Riches from runforfoot.com, and today I'm going to be doing an updated discussion about ankle plantar flexion when your foot strikes the ground during forefoot running. So just a little brief definition of what ankle plantar flexion is when you're running. So ankle plantar flexion means that before your foot strikes the ground, your forefoot, the front of your foot, points downward and not upward. So many heel strike runners do the opposite of ankle plantar flexion. So this means that many heel strike runners lift their forefoot up, and that's why they strike the ground on their heel first, because lifting the forefoot exposes the heel to the ground, and this is called ankle dorsiflexion. But one thing you always want to make sure that you're doing when you're forefoot running is to run with ankle plantar flexion. So you always want to make sure that your forefoot never lifts up before your foot hits the ground. You always want to make sure that your forefoot almost remains parallel to the ground or a little bit pointed down. And a really good example of ankle plantar flexion of the foot in forefoot running is Galen Rupp. If you watch Galen Rupp, his performance at the 2016 Rio Olympics during the marathon, you will see that he beautifully uses perfect ankle plantar flexion. So not one point during the race does he ever lift his forefoot up and smack the ground with his forefoot. He always keeps his forefoot either parallel to the ground or he keeps his toes pointed down, almost like he's running on his tippy toes. But still his foot strike position is much flatter. He's not landing high up on his toes. You don't want to do that because that will blow towards your calves and it will tear your Achilles tendon. You want to make sure that your foot position with the ground in forefoot running is very relaxed. You don't want to do anything extreme. Like I said, you don't want to land too high up on your toes, but you just want to relax. You don't want to lift your forefoot back. You want to keep a nice level foot strike or forefoot orientation with the ground. This is ankle plantar flexion, and there's numerous reasons why ankle plantar flexion during forefoot running is much better on your knees, on your lower leg, because it essentially lets the foot slide into a forefoot strike position. So your foot slides more with the ground when your foot is in an ankle plantar flex position. Whereas when you heel strike, so you're doing the opposite of ankle plantar flexion, you're lifting your forefoot, which is dorsiflexion. What happens is that you're going to slam it to the ground, and this causes a very rigid interaction with the ground. That's why a lot of heel strike runners tend to run very choppy. They're not gliders like most forefoot runners. If you watch Galen Rupp, he glides literally across the ground, and that is because of ankle plantar flexion. He doesn't lift his forefoot when his foot strikes the ground, and I really want to emphasize that because that is very fundamental in getting that glide-like stride when you are forefoot running. So I'm just going to talk about the health benefits of maintaining ankle plantar flexion when you are forefoot running. So as I said, ankle plantar flexion during running is the orientation of the foot in which the forefoot is pointed downwards towards the ground, and this reduces braking and allows an easier interaction or transition between the foot and the ground. And ankle plantar flexion allows for less joint moment distribution of the lower leg during running. It has also been found to minimize negative work and torque on the knee joint when you point your forefoot downwards toward the ground during running. Other researchers speculate that ankle plantar flexion in forefoot running allows for more elastic energy storage, which is essentially free energy. It allows for greater elastic energy storage within the Achilles tendon, so it makes your Achilles tendon potentially more economical. And a study by Sinclair 2010 found that utilizing an ankle plantar flexed foot during forefoot running was a very safe mechanism to reduce patellofemoral joint force. So basically what this means is that running with ankle plantar flexion at touchdown in forefoot running essentially did not compress the knee joint like what occurs in heel strike running. So a lot of heel strike runners run with a lot of greater knee joint compression because they are doing the opposite with their foot when they land on the ground. to heel strike, and in order to heel strike, you don't plantar flex the ankle. And as a result, you have greater knee pressure, which will eventually erode the knee joint. Another key point to mention about having an ankle plantar flexed foot in forefoot running is that allows for a more vertically aligned tibia at touchdown. And what this basically means is that when your foot strikes the ground, remember when your foot is ankle plantar flexed, not dorsiflexed, you're not landing heel first. When the forefoot strikes the ground, this allows for the shin bone to be positioned in a vertical position, a straight up and down orientation. And also the tibia is positioned under the knee. And when this happens in this position, this allows for less braking and there's less tibial shock accelerations penetrating the shin bone. So everything is landing very close to the body, very close to the center of mass when you don't lift your forefoot when your foot strikes the ground. And this is one of the reasons why in forefoot running, knee joint loads and knee joint torque is significantly lower in forefoot running than it is in heel strike running. So essentially there's less braking force or deceleration force that is exerted on the shin bone when you run with a forefoot strike, which is why anterior shin splints are a little rare in forefoot running, but is more common in heel strike running. Basically, the destiny of your health as a runner in terms of injury prevention is greatly determined by how your foot interacts with the ground. And if you want to read the full article about in detail as to what exactly does ankle plantar flexion look like, I will post the article below so you can check it out and have a better idea as to what you are supposed to do when you're forefoot running. For more information about forefoot running versus the dangers of heel strike running, please head on over to my blog, runforefoot.com. And I hope this information was useful. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for the latest update on the latest research on biomechanics. Have fun out there on the roads. Bye for now.